Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to Hope and Anchor. It's good to see you here today. I hope you've had a good week. I hope that the Lord has been at work in your life throughout each day of this week. Whether you've been at school, whether you've been at work, whether you've been at home, whatever you've been challenged with this week, whatever you've encountered, the things that have brought you joy, the things that have brought you sorrow or hardship, we trust that the Lord is at work in all those things, and He can use all those things to glorify Himself and to do good for those who trust in Him. So I'm glad you're here today. Today's kind of special. You remember last week I finished a teaching series on the Beatitudes, and so now it's just kind of like, well, what do we do now? So we're going to do youth group games today. Just kidding. Chubby Bunny, anyone? So actually we've got a whole bunch of just fresh voices to share with us today. We've got Kiki from Ambassadors for Children. We've got Dale and Sue Jones here to share with you today. And I'm excited about that, and I'm glad that you're going to be a part of that. Today, as we get started, we're going to begin with our gathering prayer, and I've asked Jamie Bryan to come and lead us together. So if you'll stand.
God, the rock of our salvation, whose gifts can never fail, deepen the faith you have already bestowed, and let its power be seen in your servants. We make our prayer through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever.
All right, you may be seated. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm excited about this morning. My good friend Kiki, known her for maybe a decade, close to a decade. She was supposed to be with us a few months ago, but had an adventure with her. She walked out. She can maybe tell you this story, but it involved a car being stolen and returned. It was a prodigal car, I think, the story. So, but anyway, Kiki is the executive director of Ambassadors for Children, and has just been that organization has been a big blessing to us in our foster care adventure, and I know it's been a blessing to many of you here today. But I'm excited for you to learn more about this important organization in our community and how our church can effectively partner with organizations like this going forward. So Kiki, come on.
Thanks for giving me a second chance to come back. That was interesting. I was set and ready, and I walked outside, and my car was gone. And I turned around and walked in the house, looked at my husband, and I was like, "Where's the car?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" Someone borrowed it, but they were kind enough to bring it back. About a month and a half later, parked 3 blocks away, and they gifted us with a ladder in the back seat. So we kind of came out on top, I guess. But yes, Adam and I go back a few years. Oh man. And I used to hang out at Big Mama's a lot, drinking coffee and chatting with strangers. Yeah, I used to come to the table, and then summer of lunch, that was a thing. That happened. Yeah, just recently reconnected, and I'm so happy to be here, happy to see the family and everything. So, yeah, I'm excited to tell you guys about Ambassadors for Children. We're an organization that really focuses and just kind of hone in on the self-esteem of kids in foster care. We're under the umbrella of Council of Churches. So our brother and sister organizations are also Safe to Sleep, Crosslines, RSVP, One Stop, all of those. There's 9 of us total. And we all kind of focus on one thing or another in our community. And AFC, Ambassadors for Children, our thing is self-esteem of our most vulnerable children. And so we know that our kids in our community that are in foster care, they have a difficult time. A lot of them transition from one home to the next. Some of them transition from one caseworker to the next. It's very unclear what's going to happen with their life next. And Ambassadors is the safe place where they can just be. It's very difficult to be in a new space and someone says to you, hey, here are clothes that you can wear, but maybe they're not the clothes that fit you. Maybe they're not the clothes that fit your personality. They're not your favorite colors. Ambassadors for Children has what we call our clothing closet, and we have all brand new clothing in that closet, and it's not really a closet, it's set up like a boutique. So twice a year, children can come, and I say children, but I mean anyone from 0 through 21, if they're still in foster care, they can utilize our services. And we service Greene, Christian, and Taney County. So they get to come in and they get to shop and pick out their favorite characters on their shirts or their favorite brands, and it's all brand new. No one's ever worn it. It's theirs to keep. And it's just such a fun time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen kids come in and pick out new clothes, and in the dressing room they're going, can I please wear this out today? Or I've heard kids say, oh, the tags are still on it, can I leave the tags on? Like they want everyone else to know that they're brand new clothes. And it's such a cool experience. Just the other day, I helped a family, and 3 girls, new in foster care, first time ever. They walk in, and I mean, you could just see the weight of the world on their shoulders and in their face. And mistakenly, I asked, how's it going today, guys? And they just looked at me, and they shrugged their shoulders and put their head down, and I was like, Kiki, that was the dumbest question you could possibly ask. But I was like, hey, come on in, let's get you settled, let's do some shopping. And we just had a fun time picking out clothes, putting on clothes and everything, trying them on. And by the time they were walking out, I mean, their shoulders were back, head held high, and on the way out, I heard a little 3-year-old go, I like this place, I want to come back. And I was like, yes, that's what we want, you know. But it's really just a moment where they can just leave everything else outside, and we could just spend some time focusing on them. We're not asking them about what's going on or how many homes have you been in. We're asking them about themselves. We want to know, what do you like? What's your favorite TV shows? What's your favorite colors? Do these shoes go with your personality? Does this seem like you? Let's find those clothes that seem like you. So that's just one of the many things that we do. It's probably one of the things we're most known for. And we currently tagged on a mobile unit now. So I have a big, huge ambassador's truck that is set up like a pop-up boutique, and currently I am taking those to the group home settings and letting the kids get brand new clothing. They're on lockdown for majority of this year, and so them making it out to do any type of shopping or get any of their clothing needs met, it's a little difficult right now. So I'm bringing my mobile unit to them and giving them a chance. We'll hit up Laura's home, Ashley's house, and Grace Circle pretty soon here. And so we also offer other things, like we have a prom closet where we have gently used suits and dresses and everything. It's actually open to the community, to anyone that is wanting to attend a school dance but does not have the dress or the suit. So we have that, it's free. And they just get to try on dresses, have a fun time, try on suits, and then it's going home with them. It's theirs to keep. We don't expect it back. We also offer things like comfort items. We have blankets. We have groups of people that make blankets for us, which we love. The kids love the blankets. We know when they transition from one place to the next, a lot of the times they lose their personal items. So we have a space where they can collect things that are just theirs. Blankets, stuffed animals, hygiene products, backpacks, anything that you could think of. We try to have it right there at their fingertips that they can just take with them and have some of their own stuff, because that's so important for them. We also offer a service called Project Self-Esteem, and Project Self-Esteem is where we come alongside of them, and if they have an interest, a hobby, a sport, whatever it is that the state will not cover, we will say, yes, we will help you with that. So we've had kids join gymnastics, we've had kids play basketball, we have kids go to church camps. We know that social aspect is such a big thing for them, being able to make friends, and playing on a team, just having that support is huge for them. So we provide that. We provide sponsorships. Recently, in the last 2 years, we've started helping pay for equine therapy. Oh man, that's such a huge blessing for many of our kids. I mean, I've seen kids do a complete 180 just from doing equine therapy. And so we honor that. We honor that that is an authentic need, and so we help pay for that. That's not cheap, but we help pay for that because the state does not cover those types of expenses. So our program is filled with a lot of different things, but all of it just stems back to their self-esteem and their self-worth. We've got Christmas coming up, and right now in Greene County, there's over 800 kids in foster care right now, and I fully expect our Christmas list to have 700 of those 800 kids. And so what we do is we partner with all the caseworkers from all the agencies. I mean, Grace Circle, Missouri Alliance, MBCH, PCHAS, all of them. We ask them to reach out to their families and their kids, and they get to write a list of things they would like to have for Christmas. So they write it, they get it back to us, and then we find people that are willing to go out and shop for those kids, bring it back to us, and we make sure that they have what they wanted for Christmas morning. It provides a lot of assistance to foster families, but it also says to the kids that are in group home settings or old enough to be in independent living, someone's still thinking about you. You're still on our minds. We care about you, and we don't want to just give you gifts as if you're a 6-year-old boy. We want to give you what you want. We want to honor those things that you enjoy and those things that represent who you are. And we want to find a donor that's willing to go out and buy those things, and we'll get that to you for Christmas morning. So it's a fun experience. We are in definite need of volunteers for that program. It takes a lot to make sure 700 kids has Christmas gifts. Last year on our list we had about 603. So each year they kept telling me like, oh, the number should be lower this year than it was last year. That hasn't happened ever. But we do not turn away a single kid. We get the request, we make it happen. There's many nights that we are shopping in Walmart at midnight and back at it at 6 in the morning to get the gifts prepared for our kiddos, but that's important to us, and we would love for you guys to be a part of that. We are on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Ambassadors for Children. That's where we share a lot of our updated information, but you can also check out our website, www.ambassadors4children.org. So thank you guys so much for having me today.
Thank you, Kiki. One thing I know is that each of you love the Lord, and that love for the Lord finds expression in the world in a multitude of ways. And what's good about having people like Kiki share is maybe what she said about Ambassadors for Children really resonates with you. Maybe this is what you've been looking for. Volunteerism, supplying needs for kids in our community. If you have questions, if you'd like to get more involved, if you've got a passion for things like this, let's talk to Kiki about that. Let's see how we can develop a partnership there together. So thank you for coming and sharing about that. Kids, back at the back there are kids activity sheets. I wanted you to take advantage of those. Parents, you can go get crayons and colored pencils for your kids as we continue in worship. Since I said worship, that means it's time to worship. So Kyle, take it away.
Please stand with us.
And
Oh, your mercy never fails me. All of my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. So in this time, God, as some of us may be experiencing trials, God, we pray that we could take that joy, God, that you promised in James. Take joy, because we know that you are developing in us something that we cannot develop ourselves. So help us us to welcome whatever may come our way, Lord, so that we may become stronger from it.
Good morning. We'll step down here. I guess this is frowned upon. So, for those that don't know us, we're Curtis and Kendi. We have been part of the elder group for a very long time. We've been privileged to be part of a long legacy. I think back to, way back in the New Brew days where we had, Wayman and Wes starting as what it was to be elders, and through the years we've had many people serve in that role. So we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, what we do, and then kind of how Hope and Anchor is maybe a little bit different than what you're used to as far as what it is to be an elder. So as an elder, one of our responsibilities at Hope and Anchor is we come together as couples, and we are ultimately responsible. I kind of lean towards more of the overseer feel to it when you look at Scripture, and we talk just what does it mean to be in prayer, teaching, and being available for the church family, and how do we serve and support you guys, and also kind of guide the direction where we feel like God is leading. We, by all means, don't have a polished fine art to this. I know that there's some churches that have, there's 30 things you do, and you've got to meet, all these things. We're looking at Scripture, and primarily we're looking at 1 Timothy and Titus. And so if you'll go ahead and read this now.
So I'm just going to read Titus, if that's okay. Okay. So Titus 1:5. The reason I left you in Crete was that you might put in order what was left unfinished and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. An elder must be blameless, faithful to his wife, a man whose children believe and are not and are not open to the charge of being wild and disobedient. Since an overseer manages God's household, he must be blameless, not overbearing, not quick-tempered, not given to drunkenness, not violent, not pursuing dishonest gain. Rather, he must be hospitable, one who loves what is good, who is self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. Hold firmly to the trustworthy message as it has been taught, so that he can encourage others by sound doctrine and refute those who oppose it.
So here at Hope and Anchor, we've been kind of in a season where we've been praying for forever. It feels like 2020 has been a very long year. But one of the things we started looking at was, as elders, is we need to have some more depth. We had some couples that served for a very long time and very faithful to this church, and they needed a break. So as we looked at doing that, what does that look like? And so we went and we did a Survey Monkey. We asked you guys. We wanted your voice to be heard, and who are people that you've interacted with, who are people that you've really kind of look at and say, this is somebody I want to go to for some advice and counsel and support. But somebody that I respect at the same time. And so with that, we've got two couples that you guys have identified, which is really beautiful, because as long as we've been a church, even back from when we looked at merging, there has been a unity that happens. So when we did the merge, it was, I think it was unanimous that it was going to be, everybody was open to the idea of the merge. So the options were, I prayed about this is where God's going to go. I prayed, and this is not where God's going to go. And then, and this is, I haven't prayed enough. That was the other choice. And so everybody in the congregation was on the same page at that moment. They felt like this was exactly where they went. And I think two people had said, hey, I haven't prayed enough, which is really honest of them. Mm-hmm. So what we had done was we had identified some couples that kind of stuck out to us, and at the same time, you guys came through with some of those same couples. So we're going to introduce Del and Sue, and then they are going to take it away and tell us a little bit of who they are and where they feel like God's leading this way.
Good morning. Has anybody ever felt invisible, rejected, like a mistake? That's my story. I was always a really shy, quiet person. And I don't know if you've noticed, but that's not a popular personality. Hard to make friends. I basically felt like I had no friends. I was very lonely. And That was hard. I also was growing up in a home where there was constant conflict and tension, no peace. I was often asked by my family, "What's wrong with you?" And I came to believe something was wrong with me, that I was a mistake. I felt rejected and unloved, and most of the time I felt very invisible. My mom, when I was about 9 years old, started having both psychological and physical problems and was diagnosed eventually with multiple sclerosis. This created a problem for my dad. My sister was only 3. So he started taking her to preschool at an Assembly of God church. Now, up to this point, we were very religious. We were Catholic. We went to Catholic church. I went to Catholic school. And I don't remember ever hearing about God's love there. So we started going to this Assembly of God church. And it was there that I prayed to make Jesus Christ my Savior. And on the day that my mom and I were both baptized, she had to be helped into the baptismal tank. She was very sick. But she walked out under her own power. And my mother has not had a symptom of multiple sclerosis since that day. It just goes to show you a couple things. Number one, God can take the worst, what seem like the worst possible circumstances of our lives, and use them for our good. And 2, we should never give up on God. We prayed for years for what happened in an instant. And I had often doubted that God was there or that he even cared. I thought he was mean, a tyrant, and somebody that would never possibly love me. You might think everything was great in my family after that moment, but it wasn't. Basically, life became all about going to church all the time and keeping a very strict set of rules. And there was still no peace in our home. There was constant conflict. In fact, I think it was worse. College was my escape. I wanted so much to go to The Ohio State University, go Bucks, and study agriculture. My parents refused to pay for it because I refused to go to a Christian college. So I worked hard. I paid for every penny of it myself. I got great grades. Was about to graduate with honors and 2 degrees, and God got my attention in a big way. I went home one night, and honestly, I just wanted to die. And I cried out to God, and I said, "Listen, you know what? If this is what life is, I don't want it." And I asked him to please let me die. And it was in that very moment that God clearly spoke to me. And he said, "Sue, who have you been living for? Who have you been living for?" And the answer was really obvious to me. It's like an epiphany. It's like, I've been living for me. I've been my own God. I've been doing what I want. Instead of following Jesus, I've been trying to keep him following me. I've been dragging him around so that I could feel like I was fulfilling some duty or some obligation, but I had no relationship with him whatsoever. And so it was that night that I really committed my life to Jesus Christ. And I told God that I would do whatever he wanted me to do. I would go wherever he wanted me to go from that point on. So what did God do? He took me out to California, the last place in the world I ever would have wanted to go, to work for a Christian ministry. I taught science classes, traveled up and down the West Coast, taught science classes to Christian school students. And I was in a strange place with strange people. I was in California. And I was never any place long enough to get involved in a church or to really make close friends. And so God was all I had. And this crazy thing happened. I found out he was enough. And I actually started to grow in my relationship with him. And I actually started to grow in my love for him. And I actually started to grow in my faith. And he started to use me. And it was the most incredible experience. And it was during that time that someone told me for the very first time in my entire life, your worth is not based on what you do. It is strictly based on the fact that you were made by God in his image. That was life-giving to me, transformed me. I worked for that ministry for a couple of years, and about the end of that time, I met Dale. I didn't like him, but that's a whole other story. We've been married for, it'll be 31 years in just a little while, about 10 days. And God has blessed us with 2 sons, Matthias and Elijah, who are in their early 20s now. And they're not walking with God, and that's broken our hearts. But God has been so faithful to us. He took us from California to Pennsylvania. We worked at a Christian camp. Dale served as a pastor in 3 different churches. It has been hard. We have faced incredible adversity and pain, family tragedy, but God has been with us through every moment of that. Every moment. And He has continued to be patient with us and grow us and use us. And I praise Him for that. Praise Him for that and for His goodness. About 4 years ago, honestly, we were at a point in our marriage where it felt completely hopeless. We had really drifted in our focus, and we were carrying a lot of pain and unforgiveness, and I just was crying out to God, please do something, help us. And His answer came in the form of something called Encounter Ministry. Dale went very reluctantly to something called Men's Encounter. And all I can tell you, quite honestly, is the man who went is not the same man who came home. I don't know what they did with the other one, but I'm so glad they kept him. Seriously, he now loves me better than he ever had. And we pray together daily, and we serve together. And it's just a whole new world for us. And when we left our last church, the last place where Dale served as a pastor, we were honestly exhausted and broken and hurting. And our son Matthias was coming to church at Hope and Anchor. And so that's how we landed here. And Hope and Anchor for us was a breath of fresh air. It was a place to heal and rest and really experience God's grace and love. So thank you.
Well, how do I follow that? Sue's right. The last 4 years have been amazing what God has been doing in our lives together. In fact, we yesterday had a major milestone. We were able to clean out and organize the garage without one argument throughout the day. That deserves applause, people. That deserves applause. Yes. So as I get into my testimony and tell you a little bit about me and my background, the first thing, whenever I get up to speak, I don't know why, people always want to know about my differences. I don't get that. But I'll just start there. Most people notice that my arms are different than theirs. But what often they don't notice is that my legs are different than theirs. And so growing up, being born, I was born with these deformities. My legs were actually more deformed at birth than my arms were. It would be like if you were setting like a catcher would set, and you were setting on your heels. All of that was encased in skin so that my legs wouldn't like stretch out like everybody else's. And so after about 28 major operations and some stretching and braces and casts and all those kind of things, I was able to walk. And that was a major thing because the doctor said I would never walk and probably never use my arms and hands. And God knows a whole lot more than doctors. So, in fact, I could even run now. I don't choose to because I'm winded when I do because of my weight. But that's kind of how I grew up. And so I entered kindergarten, and I think Adam likes this story. I entered kindergarten, and I went the first day. I was all excited to get to go. And I came home that night crying because it was a miserable day. And I told my mom, I was like, the kids were mean, the teachers didn't understand me, and I'm different than everybody else. And it wasn't the first time that I realized I was different than everybody else, but on that day I felt really, really different than everybody else. And I went to bed in my room and I was crying and crying, and my mom came in and told me it was time for dinner, and I told her, I'm not eating. And my mom, in her rather hard-nosed way, said, get your hiney out of that bed and get to the dinner table. We're not messing around. And when Mom said that, you went. So I did. I told her I was never going back to kindergarten, ever. You couldn't make me. And so the next day, as Mom was taking me to kindergarten, she said something that I will really never forget. She said, Dale, kids will always be mean, so just ignore that part. She said, teachers always need an education, so give them one about who you are and what you've been through. And she said, and you are different, so just get over it. And so from that day on, I just realized that I was different, and I was just going to get over it. And my parents never treated me any different than any of the other kids in our family. In fact, if my brother was required to take 10 gallons of water out to our cattle, I was required to take 10 gallons of water out to our cattle. And I remember early years being 10 years old and being on a construction job site with a front-end loader and a box blade, and my dad saying, I need 8 inches of gravel put in those areas there, and make sure you have it level before I get back. And the gravel truck will be here in just a few moments. And the gravel truck would come, and I would say, can you put the gravel over there? And they would say, I'm putting it where I want you, kid. And my background was to cuss them out and then tell them to put the gravel where I wanted it. And that's how I was raised. I was not raised in a Christian home. It was a construction home. Everybody did their part, and that's how I was raised growing up. So in junior high, I got my leg braces off, and it was like letting a bird out of the cage. And so everything that my older brother was starting to do, I started doing. My older brother was 5 years older than me, and so if he was doing alcohol, I started drinking alcohol, and if he was doing drugs, I started doing drugs, and if he was doing sexual things, I started following him into those things. And so it was really kind of a crazy life, and it was I was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of guy. Everybody thought I was just a really good kid because I was in Boy Scouts and band and all those kind of things, and yet I had this secret, shadowy life over here of doing things that I really had no business doing. So I grew up that way, and at the age of 16, I got invited to something called a Burger Bash for a high school group, and my friend introduced it to me as, this is going to be a great time, it's going to be burgers and babes. And so I was like, I'm into burgers and I'm into babes, so let's do it. And I went and I heard about Jesus Christ for the very first time. And I was interested in who this guy was and about living a life that way and about really getting rid of all this junk in my life. And so I started going back to this thing called Guys Only. And it was a small group just of high school guys, and it grew quickly to 20, 40, 60 guys sometimes would fill the youth pastor's house, and we would talk about real guy things. And one night after one of those times, the youth intern actually asked me, Dale, do you believe in Jesus Christ? Do you have a relationship with him? And my answer was, well, yeah, I think I do. I've been coming to this church now for about 2 months, and I'm pretty regular. And he was like, no, that's not what this is about. Do you have an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ? Do you believe that he died for you, that he raised from the dead? Do you believe those things? Do you have him in your heart? Have you invited him into your heart? And I was like, there's been no invitations here. And so I did that night. I invited Christ into my life. And from then on, I started being a different person. But when you get into college, life kind of takes a turn. And in college, I fell back into some old ways, some drinking and some things like that. Even though I was attending a Christian school at the time. And again, God just kind of woke me up one day and shook me and was like, what are you doing? And it was after some very bad things had happened in my life. And it was a wake-up call for me, and it was the moment that I was like, okay, I really need to be living for Christ now. And right after I started making that decision to really live for Christ now, God brought this beautiful lady into my life. I knew that she was out of my league. She had graduated from Ohio State. I had no degrees at that time. She did amazing in school, and I had been like the DEF student in school. And so it was interesting. We met in a restaurant. That's a whole big long story, but my friend Clay Scott told me, you should take Sue Betts out. And I said, no way. I said, first of all, she doesn't even like me. But I took her horseback riding, which she loves. It wooed her to understanding who Dale Jones really is. And as she said, we've been married for 31 years. And in that process, as Sue said, we traveled together from California out to Pennsylvania. We worked at a Christian camp. I became a youth pastor out there. Some really hard things happened through that ministry, and we ended up here in Missouri, and I was the associate pastor at Halltown Baptist for about 5.5 years. And one day we looked at each other in that ministry, and I said, if I was not the associate pastor here, would we be attending here? And we both said no. And so we left there, and we went to Grace Community Church. And at Grace Community Church, the pastor was an amazing speaker, and the church was growing exponentially overnight, and things were going great. And I had been asked to come on as an elder and pass that up because I felt like we were not where we needed to be spiritually. And I'm glad I did at that time because the church really just kind of fell apart. The pastor left to go start a new church, and they found pornography on the church computer. And the new guy coming in placed all that onto the pastor, and it was just a big, ugly mess. And you can imagine when those things start to come out, the church went from a church of 300 to a church of 200 to a church of 100 to a church of 50, almost overnight. And that's where God led Sue and I to come on as elders there. And then about 6 months into that, I went out to California to be with my brother who was passing away. And when I came home, I found out they had voted me in as the pastor. Never leave. That's the key. Never leave. You never know what will happen by committee. Yeah. And so I was the interim pastor at Grace Community Church, and 6 years later, God finally shut the doors on the church, and that's about the time that God led me to go to Encounter Ministries for the first time. And as Sue said, it was life-changing. What Jesus did in my life at Encounter Ministries was life-changing because at that point I was tired spiritually. I wasn't really leading our family at all. And going through the 14 sessions that are there for a man, I realized that I had not been the head of our household, and that really complacency was the big word. I was just checking the box and going through life. And so it was another wake-up call for me to say, all right, you got to get back in the Word. You've got to be reading daily. You've got to be praying over Sue daily. You've got to take back that spot as being the head of the household, which doesn't mean that I'm forcing her to do something or anything like that, but it really means loving her in the way that I should be loving her like Christ loves the church. And in that, I didn't know it, but she was coming to pick me up from Encounter Ministries. And so I had this whole thing in my mind of how this was going to work and how I was going to tell her all this stuff that I had been through, and it was going to be great. And I couldn't tell her anything when I first saw her because I just started bawling. And as I was crying, she just kind of looked at me and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I just started sobbing even more. And she was like, "What did they do to you at this place? Did they beat you or what?" And so we went home that night, and I was able to go session by session with Sue to explain where I felt like my sin was. and where I felt like I had let her down and let our boys down, and hadn't been really spiritually who God was leading me to be and who I should have been. And so from that moment, really, Sue's had a new husband. And every once in a while she's like, is the old guy sneaking back in here? And I'm like, nope. So she reminded me of that the other day as we were leaving someplace, and she was like, you know, you haven't been opening my door lately. So if you see me out there in the parking lot, it's because I love my wife. And that's why I'm opening her door. And so challenge to you men, keep your doors open for your brides. So Hope and Anchor, why are we here? I want you to know that Sue and I did not raise our hands in a meeting or tug on Adam's shirt tail or something and say, please let us be elders. We didn't do that at all. In fact, when Adam and Christy took us out to breakfast and talked to us about this, I was just like, what, does he know who we are? But really, Sue and I both feel like when God calls you into ministry and you have the gifts and you have the talents that God needs in a specific place, that you need to enter that call. And so we've been praying since that breakfast, which seems like an eternity ago. But we have been praying since that breakfast about whether we should answer this call or not. And to tell you the truth, this church really feels like home for us. It's a place where we can come and we feel like we can be real and obviously lay out our stuff out there in front of you. And we don't feel judged. And I think that's what can strengthen this church. And it's also what I got out of Men's Encounter, is that the reason that ministry works is because people are so transparent there. And so I think that's something that Sue and I can bring to the ministry here, is just being transparent with our lives and who we are. As we wrote out our testimonies for the elders to read, we didn't really hold anything back. We put all the glory details in there. And if you want to hear some of those glory details, I mean, we're open to sharing with you. But the real thing is we love Jesus and we love serving him. And so that's why we're here this morning. Amen? Amen.
So where do we go?
We're staying here?
Yeah.
Oh, we're staying here.
We're going to be praying for you.
Okay,
That good
right.
stuff. So the question is, where do we go from here? So the plan that we have in our brains, and hopefully it all works out, is over the next 3 months we have the Joneses, and then the Davises will be the other couple who will be speaking next week. They're going to be serving alongside us, going to do things like, run PowerPoint or wherever God is leading, and just kind of plugging them in, making sure they're more plugged in than they've ever been before. They get a real look at what we as elders see and go through. I'm sorry.
And do.
And
There's
do.
lots of things.
Our role has always been kind of whatever frees up Adam and Christy on Sunday mornings. We're going to do all the behind-the-scenes stuff to try to make that as smooth as possible, because nobody wants to worry about like, hey, the heater doesn't work anymore, or whatever that is. So that's been our role, along with working with the students and just trying to continue serve the church family. So for the next 3 months they'll be beside us. We're going to ask you guys to be praying with us in that. At the same time, if there's concerns that you might have or something you want to voice, come to us as elders. We want to hear that. We don't do a congregational vote or anything. That's not kind of how we're structured. But before we end, we're going to ask that you guys would pray with us for them over the Joneses. So we'll pray.
Can we pray? Yeah. All right. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this day. We thank you for this time that we have together to worship you and come together and learn all about Sue and Dale. Father, I pray that you would continue to guide us in this process as leadership, as a community, as a family in the church that we're in. Father, I pray that you would continue to give peace to Dale and Sue as we move through this process, and allow them to feel as comfortable and as at home as they already feel. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Like Curtis mentioned, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, snide remarks, be sure and share those over the next 3 months, because we want to be patient, we want to be thorough, and we want to be attentive to how and where God is leading. None of us want to end up off the mark. We want to be exactly where God is at work and joining him there. I've been blessed by Dale and Sue, just their heart for others, their heart for Jesus, and I think they'll bring a lot of practical benefits, and just their administrative process thinking, but also their compassionate hearts. I think a lot of you have been blessed by them over the years, and I really look forward to what God will do through them in joining the ministry here at Hope and Anchor. So, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Now all glory to God, who is able, through his mighty power at work within us, to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. Glory to him in the church and in Christ Jesus through all generations, forever and ever. Amen. May the grace and peace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.